Hello everyone, a very good gardening Sunday morning to everybody. I am architect Neelam Manjunath, speaking on behalf of Center for Green Building Materials and Technology, School of Simple Living. And this is our Simple Talk 7, and which is titled on food, birds and bees in your balcony. So we in this era of COVID, I think we all are bothered about where do we get our vegetables and where do we, get our herbs, or we cannot go to the medicine shops, so some small, and how do you make your Ayurvedic kada, which you can actually have like tulsi leaves in your balcony. So towards that, this is our small effort, and we would be very happy if all of you start with your balcony garden after attending to this webinar, and this is our purpose. And let me introduce I welcome the speakers here. We have a very eminent panel here, and I will introduce Chitra Devraj. She is our outreach and partnership consultant at CGBMT. And she is from the development sector, and she was a community manager with Quest Alliance from August 2018 to October 2019. And she was with Janagraha. I mean, that's where I actually got in touch with her, Janagraha Center for Citizenship and Democracy. And she has been doing a lot of outreach work in Bangalore and the whole of Karnataka. And the Swachh Bharat mission, she has worked on that. And I changed my city, and my city, my budget. She has done some of these programs which reach the public in a very good way. And I think that's a phenomenal work. And and before that, she was in the private sector. She started, I think, from Google India. She has worked in Hyderabad in October 2012 to March 2013. And she was also with the Shaw India Private Limited, Hyderabad, talent acquisition associate, so she acquisition, manager. So she has a diverse experience in the development field, and I will be handing over to her, and she will be taking it. She's a moderator of the session. She'll be taking it forward. And I also welcome Mr. Jwalant, our person who will be actually having a discussion and chat with our guest speaker, Dr. Vandana Krishnamurthy. They both are good friends for a very long time in this green world. And over to you, Chitra.
Thank you so much, Neelam ma'am. Thanks for the introduction. And so I also can see about 150 people already, and it's really very heartening to see that people are so keen on learning, gardening techniques, and on a Sunday morning like this when you could be like sleeping in. So welcome to everyone, all the audience. Now let me introduce Mr. Jwalant K. Mishra, who we are very happy to have, and he has taken time off to really host this program. Jwalant is actually a advisory board member for CGBMT. So a little bit about him, though it's very hard to summarize his accomplishments, I'll just try in 30 seconds. So he's from IIT Delhi, did his master's there, and spent almost like 2 decades in the semiconductor industry. So he's done the technical work in the semiconductor industry all across the US, Europe, and parts of Asia as well. So he basically has, if I have to say, grown critical competence center from scratch and scaled up organically and inorganically and established them as center of excellence in the company. So he has been very instrumental in establishing synergies in the R&D centers of excellence during mergers and acquisitions. So, and he's also currently like the director in NXP Semiconductors, and he's basically directing central research and development. So that's the career part of things. But otherwise, Mr. Jwalant is very passionate about gardening, and he refers to himself as a crazy gardener because he says he has been gardening since the age of 5th standard. So at a very young age, he took up interest towards plants and, gardening, also because his family has always loved gardening. So, that played on him. and he loves them so much that he got 400 pots in his home, like around his home, and he has a small piece of land in which he has 15 kinds of vegetables and about 30 kinds of plants. So it's almost like if he's in a lockdown, he doesn't have to go anywhere but go to his backyard. This is just a little bit about the awesome person that he is, and over to you, Jordan.
Thank you, Chitra, for the introduction. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay. And thanks for the sweet introduction. I thank Neelam Didi as well. I've gone a long path with Neelam Didi, almost a decade when I came back to India. And a very warm and coffee morning, as we always say in Netherlands, to all the participants. I'm very pleased to see so many participants. My introduction, the first 80% you leave it because that's sort of a junk for the Sunday morning. What I would like you to cheer about is my last 2 cents that I like about gardening. And that's the reason I'm here. And I'm so excited to
Jolan, there's
introduce
some
our
problem with
special
your
guests.
earphones, I think. If you could just plug them in again or something, it gets a bit.
Is it okay?
If you could say a few things, test, like say something.
Can you hear me? Test.
How are you this morning? Speak, I'm asking you
I'm
questions.
fine.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
yeah. It's fine. It's just that
You
what
can hear me?
I can. I think the speaker had gone a little, earphones had gone a little, this thing. Yeah, I think you can go ahead
Okay.
now. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Perfect. But this is the live testimony of what we are witnessing as the new normal. And that's why Neelam Didi under the CGBMT has got this special session where we can spend our time while coping up our stress. A lot of things won't work thanks to technology. And as I was mentioning, I'm very thrilled and excited to introduce you a very special guest who has a lot to do with gardening. Not only gardening, but particularly gardening in urban cities like Bangalore and the cities that you are dialed in from. Let me introduce Dr. Vandana Krishnamurthy. She is a co-founder of Urban Mali Network, something that she created from scratch. Urban Mali is a social gardening enterprise which creates a sustainable solution using native plants, and they provide end-to-end gardening solution, particularly to cities like Bangalore. Dr. Vandana has done a PhD in botany from University of Hawaii, and during her research work, she was pretty clear that she doesn't want to pursue a career which ends up writing a lot of journal papers and grow further and make a good career in the developed countries like US. She was very focused that she wanted to do something which is uh, related to common man. All the knowledge that she anchored during her lifetime so far, she wanted to share this with common man. And she wanted to let everybody knows the benefit of the knowledge that she earned. And that's why she made an effort, and that effort paid off, and that got created in the form of Urban Mali Enterprise. She lives in Bangalore and she loves Bangalore. It is her desire and it's her dream that she wants to make Bangalore a green city so that she can attract a lot of birds, butterfly and beasts, which unfortunately we have lost in last decade. She's going to share a lot of things today with us. Let me first welcome Dr. Vandana. Dr. Vandana, a very warm welcome from all of us.
Thank you, Mr. Dwalakant. I mean, it's really nice to be here with all of you today on a Sunday morning. This is the morning, right, in the week that everybody is so active and busy looking around their garden. So thanks for being with us. Thanks for the lovely introduction.
Our pleasure. And Friends, I will take you through a very quick and small journey, and I'm very excited actually. I'm going to a lot of tips on the gardening. But first, Dharwana, tell us about your journey with Urban Mali. What it is, what it does, and what kind of solution and particularly awareness that you create through your Urban Mali enterprise.
Okay. So, like you mentioned in your introduction, I come from a research background. I have a PhD in botany, and I mean, it was sort of this serendipity that got me through the journey of life that I took on. I remember that when I was in, I guess, 10th standard or 12th, if you would ask me what I wanted to do, I was very certain, Neela ma'am, that I wanted to be an architect. I was like determined that architecture was the direction for me.
Mm.
And
Right.
unfortunately, I didn't do so well in mathematics, and that gave me the small indication that okay, maybe not architecture. And almost clueless, I joined a course in environmental science because I was naturally drawn to it, I guess. And from then, I did my master's, I did my PhD, and now you can call me a plant person. So since childhood, I mean, I guess all of us who have had the benefit of living in spaces where we had a lot of nature around us. We're all plant connected people. I mean, for us, when we were children, play didn't mean sitting behind a phone or a computer screen or with the video game. Play meant running out into the open. It meant climbing trees. It meant collecting different random stones from the garden and arranging it in height order or something like that. So we thankfully had the benefit of being out in nature and connecting with nature. And humans are, on a very, very basic level, biophilic. Biophilic means they are attracted towards nature. So even today,
Right.
if you put a child, the same child who's addicted to video games, if you put that child out into an open area or in a forest, you're not going to see them standing. You see them running because that's the innate sense of attraction that we have in towards nature, and we have it in our DNA. And hopefully, with the evolution, it's not something that's going to be taken over by, say, living in concrete walls. So we still are at a stage that we can connect everybody around us to nature, even our children and all the future generations. So I lived in a home where we had a home which was maybe around 1,200 square feet or so, but we had a garden which was at least 5,000 square feet. So we spent time only in the garden. We climbed the trees and made the trees our bus and our aeroplane and things like that. So that exposure that I had to nature, which I wasn't very conscious about at that point of time, it's only when I started interacting with nature in my adult years did I realize that it is a connection that is already instilled in me. So, being naturally attracted to plants and nature, I ended up doing my PhD in botany, looking at a species of plant that is endangered in the Western Ghats. This is the palm kind of leaf. It's called Cycas sarcinalis, which we use in our bouquets. Thankfully, not anymore. So it's this palm leaf that is almost always a background for the floral bouquets. And all of those leaves came directly from the forest. Nobody was growing these plants because these plants are very, very slow growing plants. They call the dinosaur of the plant kingdom. And because they were harvesting it so much from the forest, which is, the Silent Valley and Melkote, which is here in Karnataka, and even forests of Kerala, my research was to understand how all this harvest was affecting the population of the plants, and also what are the traditional uses that the indigenous communities in these forests had for these plants, and how were they conserving it on their own small in their own small way. So it was an amazing experience for me to that I had, 7 years going from one forest to the other to core forest areas where these plants were growing. I mean, I was really blessed to have had that opportunity to do so. But after all of it, I really understood that it's so easy to run away to a forest and feel like you are doing something for the earth, or writing a research article, say talking about conservation, but that research article reaches just a few elite people who have have the rights to be able to read that article, or people in intellectual circles or in institutions, but it doesn't
Mhm.
reach people like you and me.
Right. Right.
We don't know, a lot of people don't know what is Cycus analysis, and that the fact they may have seen this leaf in floral bouquets, but they would have never connected it to the fact that this actually came from a forest, and it was the food of that plant, which was chopped down for just the whole fashion statement of having a floral bouquet and gifting it to a friend. So my whole research really turned me inside out, and I decided that I don't want to continue running away to forests. Although forests are really the kind of retreat that all of us should have, I decided that I want to be in the city. I want to be doing action oriented work. I want to be able to help people understand that it's important to conserve in your own spaces first, and then that's going to have a more far reaching impact. So I started Urban Valley with that intention. Although, even though I have a PhD in botany, I was determined I was a plant killer, because during my research days, people would give me plants to take care of, and I would invariably kill them because I don't know. I thought I had a black hand, and thankfully that turned around for me, because once I moved to a home where the previous tenants had left some empty pots with soil in it. I was eating a salad one day, and happened to drop a tomato seed into one of those pots, not even thinking that anything good would come out of it. But in a week's time, there was a small sapling, a tomato sapling, and that little sapling literally turned around everything for me. And today we've set up more than 1,000 gardens all across
Wow.
Bangalore. Yeah, and we are able to communicate with people on the need to have a garden, the need to have green spaces around you.
Right. I mean, 1,000 garden establishment within in and around Bangalore itself. Dr. Vandana says that you have done a very important thing, and you've been loved by urban people. So urban Mali has been appreciated and loved by urban people. That's fabulous. Actually, that's a tremendous. And I think that's also the reason why so many people got registered. I just was chatting with Chitra, and she just informed me we have 400 plus registration,
Yeah,
soon touching 450. So amazing. But Dr. Vandana, I also want you
yeah.
to help us here in this talk to establish a perspective for people like us who are in this call, what they should take away as a message or as a learning as far as gardening is
Right.
concerned, especially when we know very little about gardening
Mm-hmm.
and we don't know where to start with.
Right. So to like you said, to give it perspective, um, all of us need to have gardens. I mean, that's the baseline. Whether you have a shaded balcony space or a windowsill, or a brightly lit huge terrace, or a backyard with a lot of space, you should definitely grow plants. I think that it is sort of imperative in this day and age that we have even that one tulsi plant growing in the corner of your little balcony, because that at least
Right.
in a sense keeps your connect with plants and with nature. And you see, that's what people will commonly do. You move into a new house, you see a balcony space, the first thing that strikes you is, oh, I need to keep my tulsi plant if you're a Hindu, or I need to keep some flowering plants, or or people would say, I like to grow some herbs, or I should at least grow pudina. you know things like that. So
Right.
I think that on a very basic level, we need to make an effort to connect with nature around us. And it's so simple and it's highly rewarding. It doesn't, have such an effort associated with it because all you need to do is go to a nursery close by, get a pot, get some soil, and toss a few seeds that you have in your own kitchen. So, and you will see things starting to unfold. And that from that first pot, if you see success, of course, there are a lot of gardeners who've not seen anything, any success in their first attempt and then given up on gardening. But it's just about getting the
Right.
basics right. So that first pot, even that first tulsi plant, it's enough reassurance that you can grow plants and you can have nature around you. So at the first off, just to be able to think about, okay, what is this space around me? Is there light? Is there some space on the ground? Do I have railings? Can I use a wall? Just to understand how the space can be converted to have some plants, any at all. And there are many that you can start off very, very easily with. So that's what I feel is the main thing to have as a mindset.
Right, right. Well said, Dr. Vandana. And I think as you gave the example of Tulsi, I think irrespective of whether you are Hindu or any other religion, I have heard the nearby nursery that their stock always get finished because it's a new normal. It's a COVID situation, and everybody wants a
Yeah.
Tulsi plant in their house. So I think that's also
Mhm.
it's a sort of becoming a must that you should have certain plants inside your house. But Dr.
And
Vandana,
I
on the
want
other
to
hand,
give you
sure, go ahead,
one
please.
background sort of tidbit about Tulsi. So
Sure.
Tulsi, of course, has high religious value. We use it. We pray to Lord Rama, and God is Tulsi, right? But and they're part of the scriptures and stuff. But the real question is, why do we find Tulsi plants everywhere? Okay, we do our pujas once in a year or twice in a year, but you see Tulsi plants in temples and growing in large numbers. So when I was doing, my research into understanding how gardens were traditionally, I came across this very important fact. Tulsi is, not only growing in temples, but it's also given to you when you go to a temple. So they give you the tirtha and with the leaf of tulsi. If you look at it, a lot, most of us go to temples when we have certain worries or stress, and or we are
Right,
praying for something
right,
good to happen
absolutely.
in our life, right? So we're already in a state of we're feeling a little low, we're a little dejected in life, we're feeling a little depressed. Tulsi is an antidepressant. So eating that one leaf of tulsi instantly gives you a burst of energy. And with that burst of energy, you also have this new enthusiasm to be able to solve that problem in your life. So one of the main medicinal values of tulsi is that it's an antidepressant. So if you eat a few tulsi leaves a day,
Right,
that's great for you health wise, but it's also really great for you mind wise. So I would totally recommend that people do that. But it is a queen of all herbs, because
right,
it has multiple medicinal values. It's not only used for an antidepressant, but it also is used for cold and cough. It's used for fevers. It's used for digestion. It has a varied number of medicinal uses. So that's just my little tidbit on tulsi.
thanks for this tidbits. It will help. And I saw one of the participant has requested if we can show some plants. So there's good news. The second part of this session is where Dr. Vandana is going to share with us some live demo and sort of a hands-on how you can do things, and will also introduce us with various type of plants that she has
So
in her garden.
Chitra, is it clearer now?
Yeah, I think it's clear enough. Sometimes the internet gets a bit
Okay.
slow. And JKM, sir, your the I think your microphone. What do you call that? That has to be a little far away from your mouth, I think. Huh? Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I think we've finished the first half an hour of the session, and I think there's so much knowledge that it's going to be hard to put all of it in, but we'll try. So the how we've placed it to the audience is the first half an hour is just a discussion. Then we are going to go into a workshop where Vandana is going to show us a few things with the plants, and also there, Jwalant will be asking questions as well. So it's going to be a mix of questions and workshop, for which we have the next half hour to 40 minutes, and then we are opening the room for questions because we're pretty sure you'll have a lot of questions pertaining to this subject. So a request to everyone is, let's try and maintain time, though it's very difficult because it's such an interesting topic. So yeah, this is the second half an hour slot. Yeah, thank you.
Right. So, Dr. you want to start some
Um,
demonstrations, and then in between, I would like to ask some common
am I
questions that I
audible
have.
now?
Yeah, you're
Yes, you are
audible.
perfectly.
I removed my earphones.
Yeah, sure, you're
You are
audible.
still audible, crystal and clear.
Jwalant, your
Okay,
voice is
let me
slightly less.
Your volume.
Okay,
Yeah,
it
now it's fine. Now it's fine.
was fine. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah, go on, please.
Okay. Yeah. So I will just continue the conversation on gardening, the need for gardens, and what it means in a city like Bangalore. Is that all right?
Yeah, yeah.
Sure.
Okay. So we have people from all across India. We have people from, I believe, from out of India as well. So what I'm about to say is not something that is going to be new for you. It is about Bangalore, but it's, I'm sure, very relatable from to where you are from as well. Bangalore is growing at a very rapid pace. Okay, it's probably one of the fastest developing cities in all of India. As if you are a person from Bangalore, if you visited Bangalore before and after, or in gap of say 5 years or so, you would come back and see that a lot has happened, a lot has grown, a lot has come about, all structure and building wise. It's great that we're headed in the direction of development, but we have sacrificed a lot of forests to be able to to be able to build buildings and to be able to be in the direction of development as well. Um, but we're never going to get those forests back. Unfortunately, it will be too much of a reverse. Even if we did break down buildings and let the land, it take many, many, many years for the forest to come back, and we're probably not headed in that direction. They say that by the year 2050, 60% of the world's population are going to be living in cities. So, and almost never is a city prepared to be able to take on the extra burden or um, pressure of having so many people living there, right? So it is we may reach a point where there is very less nature around us, and there's just going to be a lot more buildings and stuff. But all is not lost. Gardens give us this great opportunity to be able to green our little spaces around us, and the little garden that you have in your balcony or on your windowsill makes a huge difference. I have a balcony here where I have filled it with plants. Actually, I have 4 balconies, and all 4 balconies are filled with plants. But it is my little oasis. I mean, having the wind blowing through the plants and the leaves touching my face, I'm extremely calm, and I'm extremely at ease with the and people who have gardens. I'm sure Mr. Jwalakant, your garden is your little retreat,
Absolutely.
ma'am.
Absolutely.
The green space that's around you is something that gets you back, gets you grounded again.
Right.
So there is a lot that we can still do with the little spaces that we have. Unfortunately, we're not doing as much because
Mhm.
we're in the direction of building more and developing more, that gardens and green spaces are not very much in the focus of people. And I think that it is sort of our responsibility to be able to put it there. If you do an aerial view of Bangalore, if you do a terrain view, you will see that there are so many empty rooftops. I think almost 90% are empty. You will hardly see a patch here and there that's actually green and having somebody's rooftop garden. Cuba as a country went through a period where they could not import any food and they had to grow everything on their own.
Mhm.
Okay, because of political reasons. So the people were put into such a position that they were forced to grow their own food, and therefore they were forced to get extremely creative. So you would see people whose backyards were completely converted into vegetable gardens. You'd see their terraces, their balconies. You would even see vertical walls being converted into spaces where you had recycled containers that would be growing all your vegetables and salad greens and things like that. So,
Right.
but unfortunately, there had to be an event such as this to be able to get people to grow their own food. We're very much headed in that direction. But we are still comfortable where food is coming to our doorstep. We don't have to worry about it. But if we were growing our own food, imagine the control of what is going into that food is right in our own hands. Okay, so sometimes there's this doubt that I have got organic vegetables and organic groceries, but is it actually organic? How can you test it out, right? So, but when you're
Right.
growing food in
Right.
your own spaces, you have control over everything. And believe me, it is the most rewarding experience to be able to go and pluck that one tomato from your plant and eat it right there. That that kind of joy that you get with harvesting your own vegetables is something else completely. Um, so it all depends on us now. It is really our own individual impetus to be able to do this. But there are so many ideas. There's so much creativity with people all across the world. People are doing things very, very differently to reduce temperatures in building. People are growing grass on their rooftops, and there have been amazing
Right. Right.
technical sort of procedures in the way you can do this without affecting the structure and causing any water retention or stagnation, but actually enjoying a few degrees less of temperature in your building because of that. So, and there are umpteen things. I mean, in terms of innovation, vertical walls is one thing that is what we're seeing all around us. You see, any hotel or any restaurant, people are, have walls that are converted into these small walls, vertical walls with cups and, um, plants growing in them, like mostly shade loving plants and all that growing in them. So it's an innovation that's come about. It's an innovation that's moving fast. Some of it is less technical. It can definitely be improved. But imagine if we reach the stage where this wall behind me can technically be converted into, um, say, a wall for herbs or something like that. And it's just one person's idea that can create something and, make a huge difference for us. So therefore, it really is up to us. And like I said, that first plant that you have success with, that is going to pave the way for you to move on to the next plant and the next plant, and then take over your entire balcony and maybe your friend's balcony as well. So that's how planters they seriously
Right. Right.
look at
So, Dr. Vandana, I beg your pardon in interrupting you. Very nice advices I get and a lot of knowledge. While you are talking, can we have a look on what's there in your garden and how you have decorated your balconies, and how we can see
okay.
actually that realistically we can do something in a very small space in city like Bangalore? What can we do?
Okay. So I'm not sure I can move my computer around, but I'm gonna try. I get the plants one by one to you. So here is
Yes, we can see.
turmeric. Okay. This is
Wow.
one of the most simplest plants to grow. You see how luxuriously it's growing. Turmeric gets the rhizome or the underground part gets ready after 11 months. So once you have planted it, 11 months later, you see the leaves withering away and falling down, then you know that the rhizome is ready to be harvested. So we usually harvest this around the New Year's
Mhm.
time when we have our Ugadi celebrations because it's part of our practices to offer turmeric. Here, this is unfortunately there are no leaves, but this is periwinkle. Many of you may have heard of periwinkle. Periwinkle is um, now known to be used for cancer
Right.
cure. So people are, creating different powders and potions with this for Ayurveda, especially. Periwinkle grows very easily. It's also a huge butterfly attractant. It's also called as Vinca rosea or Catharanthus roseus if people are like botanical names. So and the native varieties have like purple flowers and white flowers. You also get multiple other colors. So that's that.
And I guess, Dr. Vandana, this flower in North India, it is called Sada Suhagan because it is always full of
Yes,
flowers.
yeah, Sada Bahar also.
Right.
So the thing about it is it produces at least 3-4 flowers every single day.
Right.
In Kannada, it's called as Nitya Malli, which means that
Nitya Malli.
everyday jasmine.
Right.
Okay, so everyday flower. So every day there are so many flowers, and it's a treat for people to see, as well as the butterflies, because there's this juicy nectar.
Right.
So this, unfortunately, the season is not the season for flowers, but this is a native variety of rose. So the thing about roses, everybody is fond of roses, right? Because rose, is kind of popularized so much. But many of the roses that we find in most nurseries are highly hybridized roses. So hybridization is a method of artificial manipulation of the plant so that this same plant can give me, say, yellow flowers and red flowers and pink flowers and all of that. So people have played around with the sort of the genetics of this to be able to produce that. But what happens is that along the way the plant becomes extremely weak. The
I
immunity
see.
reduces highly, and it is therefore attracted. It becomes a plant with a lot of pests and diseases.
Right.
And if you are someone who has rose growing in your house, you would have noticed that a lot of pests eat up the leaves. You see all the white fungus affecting the plant and stuff. But this is a variety called paneer rose. It's found a lot in southern India, and it's one of the native varieties of rose. It is still the one that we use in
Mhm.
Gulkand.
Right.
Gulkand is made with the rose petals, right? So the petals of this, if you actually bite into it, it tastes delicious, just like Gulkand. Not that sweet, but yeah, it's pretty good.
Vandana,
So this is paneer.
sorry. Hi, Vandana, you were saying there are basically some issues with the, like, you have rats and other rodents that can take up. What do you mean? So, like, it's like they could eat up these plants, you're saying? So, I think one of the questions Jwalant sir also had in this, for this was what are the issues like for gardening and how can we then maintain those? I think the audience also would like to know that, like maintaining such plants.
Yeah, which are without pesticides, pests, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe I can show
And
some of the
Dr.
plants a little
Vandana,
later.
Jwalant here, as we talk, I think how to start all this thing. You are, I think, making more
Yeah.
of us jealous that
So
you
I
have
will
so
get on
much
to the
lush green garden.
sure, sure. I will take you through a step-by-step, workshop of how we can set up our own garden. So just to answer
Excellent.
that question before,
Yeah, you can actually start, Vandana, because everyone is
Lots of
impatient
questions.
to know how to make a garden like yours.
Okay, so then I will give the basic introduction to plants. Now, plants, we all studied about plants in school, right? I'm sure we've completely forgotten about plants and what they do, how they make food, right? So, there are three most important aspects for any plant to grow well, make food, survive. And that is sunlight. Okay, if a plant doesn't have sunlight, it's not going to be able to do very well, or it's not going to be able to capture enough of that energy, which then can be converted into food, which is used by the entire plant to maintain good health. Okay, even in the darkest of the darkest corners, plants, if they have some amount of sunlight, they can grow. But a plant cannot grow in darkness. Okay, so that's one of the important things to remember. The second thing is water. Okay, in a forest, water is like freely available, or the soil structure is naturally created in a way that it can retain water. But since we are not living in the forest, in a garden, we need to water our plants. Okay, so even there's a fine line between watering too much and watering very less. So that's something that we learn along with our plants. The third thing is nutrition. Nutrition is what we consider as manure, or people make their own compost at home. So it is broken down organic matter, which has a lot of nutrition for plants to grow. So these are the three mantras of being able to understand what your plant requires: sunlight, water, and nutrition. So keeping this in mind, let's go ahead.
Vandana, one quick question. And thanks for that information. But like one quick question is there better internet when you move a little the other side towards your home? If you're not showing plants anymore, are we showing plants anymore after this?
Is there some disturbance?
What happens is that there's a lag between when you say something and the way we receive
Okay.
it. So
All
just
right.
checking.
I'm going to try and move my computer a little bit, but
Basically, where's the closest spot to Wi-Fi? I mean, if we are not showing plants anymore, then we can just go ahead and have a practical. Theoretical one.
okay, let's see if this works. Okay, so just to get started, this is a container. This is a typical container that we find at any nursery or any garden store. So this is something that is 6 inches in depth. But if we are planning to plant something, then we cannot work with something that is only 6 inches in depth. We need a pot that is at least 1 foot in depth. Okay, so 1 foot is enough
Right.
space for the roots to grow. Okay, so I'm using this only as a demonstration. So this is a
Sure.
plastic pot. You have varied materials of pots. We have mud pots, we have cement pots, we have plastic pots, FRP, ceramic. There's so many things. Okay, so it really is up to you as to what you would like to use. We also have grow bags. Grow bags are very, very commonly used. So this is a grow bag. Okay, it is
Yes.
it's
Yes.
a
We have
material
seen
that's
this.
very similar to
Getting
tarpaulin.
popular.
Pardon me.
Right. We have seen this getting very popular every now and then. You used to see this around. So
Right. It's great for using vegetables for a vegetable garden. So you have a drainage hole and you have a flat base. It takes a
mhm.
shape of the soil, and you have different depths of deep grow bags. So there are many, many different varieties. So lots of different containers. Really depends on you which container you would like to use to start off your garden. If you're looking at, say, a plastic container, one of the most important things when you buy a container is, one, of course, we're going to look at the depth. The second thing is we're going to look at the drainage holes.
Those
Okay,
holes.
this pot has a
Right.
little few, extra drainage holes. We don't need so many drainage holes, but we definitely need drainage holes. So even if you have, say, 1 or 2 drainage holes, that's fine. But the main intention is that water should drain out from the plant. We don't want water that is stagnant at the roots. We want water that is flowing because that what's going to happen is that the roots are going to rot and eventually your plant will die. So drainage, that's the first thing that you look at when you have a pot. Okay. Now, if you want to set up the pot here, first, what the layer that goes into your pot would be the drainage layer. So in Bangalore, we typically use what we call as jelly stones, or just broken down granite pieces.
Right.
Okay. You can also, yeah, there is a small lag with my Wi-Fi. Um, I'm trying my best, but
No, you're
is it
audible and
very
you're
Yes,
bad?
audible.
visible
Yeah,
sufficiently.
we can manage. Maybe for Q&A you can move, but I think we're good for now because you need the garden space now, right? So yeah, it's fine. We'll manage with them.
Yeah. So the jelly stones is has to be placed above these drainage holes. Okay. So that you might ask a question like, why jelly? We also use sand, by the way. So what happens is that when you pour water into this pot, I mean after you've planted it, when you pour water, you don't want all the good stuff, right? All the amazing manure and the great soil that you put in to all get drained out. So therefore we need to place jelly stones and sand on these drainage holes. That creates a drainage layer. Water passes through them, all the excessive water comes out, but the water doesn't take away soil and manure with it as well. So you can use jelly, you can use sand. Somebody suggested wood pieces. Yeah, for sure. That will degrade in time. You can also use broken pot pieces like this. So you have a pot that is broken. You want to use broken pot pieces. Even that serves very good as a drainage layer. Typically, something that will prevent stuff from just flowing out. So we have a drainage layer. Okay, beyond this is when our main media comes in. So when I say media, it doesn't mean it's only soil or it is a mix of soil, manure, and if you have a balcony garden, coco peat as well. So soil, what we get here in Bangalore and Karnataka is red soil. So it's very,
Right.
very red soil. It's almost maroon in color, and it has a great number of micro and macronutrients that are required for plants to grow. In different parts of the world, in different parts of India, we get different types of soil. So you have the alluvial soil, you have the clay soil. Not to say that these are not good enough. They're very. You definitely should be going local and using the soil that you have. But what is important to note is that it shouldn't be too tight so that water doesn't drain out. So with certain additions, you have to create a well-drained soil for your plants to grow. So with red soil, what we use generally is coco peat. So you get coco peat in bricks like this. So what it is dried and compacted coconut fiber. Okay, so you loosen up, you place this in water and it expands and it becomes the coco peat powder. So we mix coco peat with the soil as well, and then what we also have is manure. So this is just vermicompost. Vermicompost is good. We can also use cow manure, which is farmyard manure, goat's manure. Some people use goat's manure as well. So and your own compost too.
Right.
Whatever is growing around you, whatever is easily available, whatever is organic is what you would use. But ensure that it doesn't have any chemicals because we don't want to grow our garden with any chemicals in it. So you have to make a mix of these three elements, which is soil, manure, and coco peat. Usually, what we do is that we keep soil a little more than manure and coco peat. So say you have 50% of soil, you will have 25% of manure and 25% of coco peat. So the soil needs to be more because soil has these micronutrients that a plant requires. For instance, like magnesium, calcium, all those micronutrients, not your nitrogen, NPK, but all the micronutrients that are very important for cell development, for ensure that there is healing when there is any damage caused to the plants. So soil is very, very important. Some people will say, oh, why don't we use just coco peat and manure? Coco peat is a neutral media, and it doesn't have any nutrition in it at all. So everything will come only from manure, which is not really it's not enough to grow your plants. So that is a media. If you're buying a sapling from any nursery, you can just transplant that sapling with the original media into this pot. Okay, as much as you can, keep the original media of the sapling bag, because that is the environment that the plant has grown with, till this point of time. So you want to keep a
Right.
little of that, so that the plant can still do well and function well, and then also start learning to adjust to the new media or the new environment that we have. So yeah, so that goes into your entire, that's your pot. Okay, fairly simple. Okay, you need to have your first layer of the drainage, and the rest of it we need to have a media, and then you do the planting. Okay, so now the question would then be like, what can I plant? One is straightforward, buy a plant from your nursery. My recommendation is to look up native plants and buy native plants, because that's what we really require in our cities. Native plants are the ones that attract biodiversity. They attract butterflies, they
Right.
attract bees, they attract birds, and there are varied kind of plants that have some or the other biodiversity attached to it. But if you don't want to buy a plant from a nursery, there is so much in your own home that you can use to start off your garden. Here we have dhania. Okay, I don't know if you can see.
Right.
So we have dhania seeds here. We all have dhania in our kitchen, right? We use it as a spice. And the trick with dhania is break the seeds into two, soak it overnight, and then plant it in your garden. You will see a lot more success in growing dhania than if you just had to sprinkle the seeds right away. So it generally tends to be a plant that is difficult to grow, but this trick will really help you be able to grow. Then the next one is methi. So we all have methi as well, right? So again,
Right.
another spice that we use. Methi is one of the most easiest plants to grow. Just sprinkle methi in one of your pots, and you'll see that the plants germinate, the seeds germinate, and in a month or so, you can harvest a whole pot full of methi. In South, I mean, I guess across India, all of us have
Right. Right. The chili.
dried chilies. So it's used in our tadkas, and we make chili powder and all of it. Inside this chili are dried seeds already. So this is ready for us to just throw into our pot and have some chili plants. Apart
Dr.
from
Vandana,
the stuff that is
just sorry to
already
stop
there in
you.
the garden.
Uh, we also have turmeric, as you shown, but we normally get turmeric as a powder in our
Yes,
kitchen. So how do you
I
grow
have a
turmeric?
whole range of more plants. Oh, yes, turmeric as well.
So how do you grow turmeric? Where is the seed?
So turmeric is very similar to your ginger, right? We all use ginger as well. So if you look at a ginger rhizome or a turmeric rhizome, you see this certain lines or ridges on this rhizome. So
Right.
those are the parts from where a new shoot would arise. So you have to carefully cut this rhizome in a way that you are retaining these lines and plant it directly into the soil. The same with turmeric. Turmeric also, it's a little leaner, but it has those lines or those ridges. They're the nodes
Right.
from where the new shoot would arise. So we have to retain the nodes, and therefore, plant it carefully into the soil so that the new shoots can arise from there. Okay, so ginger and turmeric is the same. Now, if you want grow ginger in your balcony. Very easy to do it, but like I said, like my friend turmeric here, it's going to take 11 months. So
Right.
if you are still enthusiastic about growing ginger and turmeric, please go for it, because I know for a fact that the turmeric leaves are also used in different recipes. So and they're steam cooked and all of that. So while you're waiting for your turmeric and your ginger to grow, you can be using the leaves for different dishes in your kitchen. The other one is garlic. Now garlic as well, just here what we have to ensure is that we have the flattened portion here, and we have the part that's longer and it's
Pointy.
sticking out. So what we need to do is we need to stick in the flattened portion into the soil, because this is where the roots come out from, and this part is where the shoots will come out from. So in a pot, say you have a 1 foot dia pot, you can easily put in at least 10 of these, and they multiply below ground. So in 3 months time you can harvest your garlic pods. But the amazing part about this is that the leaves that come out, of the chives that they call it, they are delicious. You just cut a few and put it into your salad or into your rice. It has this lovely pungent garlic taste. You have to try it. It's delicious. I mean, I for one grow so much of this, and I leave some to bloom as well, because the blooms attract the most rare kind of wasp. I have never seen
Mhm.
such beautiful painted wasps, literally, that come to the garlic inflorescence and the onion inflorescence. So onion is the same way. You see, any onion that you have in your kitchen, you already see some existent roots. So this is a part that we put into the soil, and here is where the shoots come out. This also multiplies below ground, and
Right.
the shoots are what people eat as spring onion, right? The leaves, the onion chives. So that also has very, very, very pretty inflorescence that's white and almost a little lavenderish. So that's really nice to have. Then we
Just wanted to
have,
show the
um,
turmeric, Vandana. Just wanted to show the
pardon
turmeric.
me?
This is what is
Yay! Wow,
turmeric.
ma'am, beautiful.
Yeah.
You
So we put
harvested this recently?
kada. No, no, no. I have bought it, but this is the way it looks actually.
Yeah,
And the
wow.
kadha, the Ayurvedic kadha, actually, this is what we use for that. For Corona, they are giving the kadha, so this is
Yeah,
what is
yeah.
going to. So I just wanted to show. It's
Wow.
yeah.
Thank you so much for that.
And Dr.
So
Vanda,
yeah, I
one
mean,
question I am
somebody brought
already
up a point
reading
that
in the
turmeric.
chat window. There was one question, curious question from our audience here, that normally in the market you get the dried turmeric
Yeah,
roots. Can we use that to grow?
you get white. Can you repeat the question?
The
Wasn't clear.
dried, in the market you get dried turmeric roots, which you ground, you make a powder of it.
Yeah,
So that dried root can we use to grow the turmeric?
yeah. You can use the dried turmeric, but you will may not see a huge success with it as compared to growing a fresh root of turmeric. Like, ma'am, if you stuck a piece of that into the ground, it'll grow beautifully well. So, in some markets still carry fresh turmeric roots. So a little bit of searching. I know
Mhm.
now the times are a little harder to, go to the markets and see the markets brimming with the same
Right.
enthusiasm as before. But if you look for it, you may find turmeric, fresh turmeric as well. The next plant that I want to talk about is purina. Okay, one of our favorites, right? Because the fragrance and is just amazing. You put a leaf into your mouth and it bursts with flavor. And the good news is that this is so easy to grow. You don't need seeds. You just need this one cutting that you grow that you buy from the market. All you need to do is, even here you have these certain nodes. So the nodes are where the leaves are emerging. We need to ensure that even if we make cuttings, we need to ensure that the nodes are available for the roots to grow. So if I made a cutting between the two nodes and I stick it into the ground, the roots start emerging from here and the leaves will start growing from the nodes. So be sure not to cut, not to stick this part. I mean, don't cut it at the node. Cut it above the node or below the node, because that's where the roots will emerge. You can also keep the pudina stalk in water for a few days so that the roots emerge and then plant it. But I usually don't do that. I just put it right into the soil. It's such a gregarious plant. How much ever area you give it, it'll just keep growing and growing and growing if it's getting good enough amounts of water and sunlight. So this is another super easy plant to grow. People who are fond of Italian food, Italian basil, can be grown in the same way. Make cuttings above and below the node, stick it into the soil. It grows really well. They say that you should really be a bad gardener if you can't grow pudina. So I would suggest that if you want to, start off your gardening journey, pudina is the easiest one to start off with because it's so rewarding. It's like such a beautiful, lovely plant, and everything about it will satisfy you. So start off with pudina. The other things is tomato. It's like my tomato experiment. What you need to do is cut the tomato, take out the pulpy part, put it on a tissue paper, let it dry, let the seeds dry. You could plant the fresh seeds, but if you plant the dry seeds, it creates a situation for the seed to want to grow. Like in
Right,
nature,
right.
when seeds dry out, then they find a little bit of moisture, they grow. So it's the same situation. So you take out the pulp, put the pulp on a tissue paper, let it dry out, carefully remove the seeds and plant it in your garden. So this is a nati variety of tomato, and I have it growing in my garden. And I actually bought it from the market, as in a friend of ours has a door delivery service of organic vegetables. So she got these nati tomatoes from Andhra Pradesh. I saved the seeds and I'm growing my own plants. Same thing for capsicum. Okay. What do? We usually remove the seeds and throw that part, right? And we use the
Right.
rest of the capsicum. But just keep the seeds, dry it, plant it in your garden. You would be getting capsicums as big as this if you want. So again, it really means taking care of your plant. Another plant is potato. Now we keep potato for too long. Like you can see here, there are these shoots that are already coming out. So in botany, we call this as eyes. So these are the eyes of the potato. What you need to do is don't plant the whole thing because there's potentially multiple potato plants. What we need to do is cut a wedge so that we have this shoot included in that and stick the wedge into the soil. In a pot, you can stick at least 4 of these pieces. The plant starts giving leaves, and the trick is when it starts flowering is when the potatoes will be ready. So you can just dig up. Sometimes the potatoes come to the surface also, and then you know that the potatoes are ready. So this is all the stuff that you can easily grow with stuff that you have in your kitchen. If you're feeling little experimental, jeera and dried peas, dried rajma, all of that can, typically start. You can start experimenting with. If you have larger space, then you can have a yield of rajma as well. So it's just how experimental do you want to get. And one other thing is for balcony gardeners, if you have lesser space and little sunlight, microgreens is something that can start with. You can grow microgreens in coco peat, so you can start with seeds like methi, mustard, dhania, palak, dantu. All your different greens can be grown in a small pot. I use, so this is a waste pot. I got a speaker and this is something, so I just put in the coco peat here and I harvest my microgreens. So that's another thing to think of. You don't even need to go to a nursery, maybe just for the soil and manure, but we have so much waste lying around us, to grow greens. I have a bucket here that is growing It's an old bucket. I just made a drainage hole and I have palak growing in it. So you can start a recycle garden. You don't need to start with a new pot or anything like that.
Dr. Vanna, let's take a few questions from the audience, and I will
Sure.
start. I can read some of them in the chat window. And Chitra, maybe we can start opening the line for people who want to ask a question. Perhaps
Yeah.
we request them to raise the hand first.
So I think they can
I
start
think
chatting here.
one second,
Yeah.
Chitra, one second. I think we will let Vandana finish. I think the flowering plants and some other things also there. How much more do
Okay.
you have, Vandana, to finish this?
Nice. I thought I saw 10 minutes, so I just wound up. Do I have a few more minutes?
Yeah, no, yeah, do it. Please let her finish, and then we can take the questions. No problem.
Yeah, I'll read out the questions after that.
No, let her finish first.
Yes, ma'am.
Then we
After the
can
question, after that, I read out the questions.
Yeah.
So I
So you
have
go ahead.
a few minutes.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Please go ahead.
So one of the things Urban Mali talks about a lot is native plants.
We
So
are
native
listening to
plants
you.
are plants.
So first we listen.
Go ahead, Dr. Vanna.
Yeah.
Okay. So native plants are plants that are native to this part of the world, or whichever part of the world you're from. So those are plants that are originated from there, and they are plants that are well suited to that climate, that the soil, um, microbiodiversity, or the microorganisms. They are suited to the temperature, and therefore they're extremely hardy. Okay, these are not plants that you require to pump with chemical fertilizers or pesticides to be able to take care of them. Unfortunately, most nurseries all across India carry exotic plants and not native plants. For instance, Sadabahar, that's a native plant. Okay, so you will see, even if you just throw it in one corner, it grows and it blooms and it's so happy. Or when the seeds fly out and stick into one corner of uh, two cement blocks broken and there's some soil in between, you will see Sadabahar growing there as well. So they are hardy. They know how to survive. If you didn't water your garden for 2 to 3 days, they will still know how to prop themselves back up when you do water it. But most importantly, native plants attract local biodiversity. So we're talking about butterflies. I mean, in a city like Bangalore, ma'am and Jwalakan sir still have the benefit of seeing a lot of butterflies around them. But in Bangalore, you hardly see butterflies and even birds in the cities at all. So
Absolutely.
it's much harder to. I mean, like say even a decade ago, we would have sparrows come in and lots of mynas and barbets, but we see much lesser of them because their native plants have been lost, and of course they don't even have spaces to nest because of the construction and their trees being taken away. And the kind of butterflies, oh God, we used to see an array of different butterflies, but we see very less and very few these days. And same with bees. I mean, if you're growing a vegetable garden, you need bees in your garden because they are the ones who are pollinating the plants
Absolutely.
and creating the amazing vegetables and fruits that we all eat. So bees are also extremely important. So native plants attract all these important biodiversity, urban biodiversity for us. And apart from these are other beneficial insects like ladybirds, earthworms, that we don't see much of because of the kind of plants that most people use. And these plants don't require chemicals. So therefore, you can have a garden that's completely organic. I mean, we're already breathing such horrible air, right? And air pollution. So why do you want something to grow or to be used or in your own home space as well? People who have lawns tend to put in urea and other chemicals at least once in 2 weeks. And when that chemical application is going on, you just close your nose, you hide in your room because it's so toxic. You just can't take the smell, and you feel like you're breathing in the fumes. That's how bad it is. At Urban Mali, we ensure that all our gardens are taken care of organically, and we have gardeners who will say, thanks to us, because they used to work for gardening companies where after they have to really cover up their faces, and after spraying they're sort of breathless and their hands are full of rashes because those are nasty chemicals. So we really should be able to promote. And if I had to give you, like, say, 5 flowering plants that you can grow in your balcony that are native: hibiscus, oleander, okay, jasmine. My God, there are like 6 varieties of jasmine that are native to India. Okay, the paneer rose, that's one. Chrysanthemum, okay, the table rose, marigolds. There's so many native plants that we already know of and we already have in our spaces. It's just that we need to promote them a lot more.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Dr. Vandana. Maybe Chitra, we can take a few questions from audience.
Yeah, we
May I
can
request
start.
you to do?
Yeah, sure. Uh, so I'll just maybe sometimes I'll club one or two questions because they all seem similar, but yeah, we can go one by one. Firstly, there's 2 or 3 observations people have noted down. That Shrikant and Archana, they're talking about wooden pieces can be the best alternative for jellystone, and Archana says broken terracotta pieces. So this is a point that I'm just reading this out. The question here is from Prem, who says instead of cocoa pitaken, I can't pronounce this well.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Coco
can
peat.
use cow dung and soil in the pots. That's the question. And then Nanda Kumar asks something similar. That is, in the pot, how often do we need to pick the surface soil to churn, which believe is healthy for the plant? So, if these questions you can maybe combine and answer, Vandana.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure, Vandana, you can go. You can answer
Okay.
this, then I'll go
So,
to the next one. Yeah.
okay. I hope my earphones are not creating a problem because.
No, it's fine.
Okay. So yeah, wooden pieces can definitely be used as mulch, but like I said, they will degrade with time. So you don't want to be left with no drainage layer. So definitely something to think about. The second question about using soil and manure only. See, typically that's how we set up any garden or soil. We're not putting coco peat there. Coco peat is only a new addition. It is some sort of a innovative thing that has come about only to keep pots a little lighter. So it is a question of don't want to overload your balcony. The other thing is that it allows for drainage, free drainage. So then typically the soil and manure, if you're overwatering it or you make a few mistakes here and there, the soil can get extremely tight, and then water doesn't drain easily. But if you're managing a garden really well, you don't need coco peat. It is something that just preserves water a little bit. It preserves water, just keeps the dampness, but it allows for all excess water to drain out. So if you're using soil and manure, that's great. I mean, that's all that plants need, for its health. The third question about aeration, yeah, if you have a garden that we need, sorry, if you are tending to your garden on a monthly basis, you just have to loosen up the topsoil so that water can drain out, and also roots respire, so they also breathe, and we need to give those air spaces around the roots so that the respiration happens and it's not clogged up, and therefore then the plant is unhealthy or it's suffering. So aeration once a month, for around 1 inch or 1.5 inch around the plant stem, around the roots, is really good enough.
Vandana, so the next couple of 3 or 4 questions are about turmeric, and it looks like you have to conduct a masterclass for turmeric alone because there's a lot of about turmeric. So it's like I'll just like quickly summarize this.
Yeah,
So can we grow turmeric in a dried turmeric root sort of, which we can buy from the shop? Is what Manisha
yeah.
asked.
I think
Gayatri,
sir
yeah,
asked the question.
Already
yeah. So the
answered, I
ones we've
think you
already
want to ask.
answered, then we can go ahead. Yeah. So the one, and there's a comment from Archana who says turmeric powder we get from stores isn't as pure as the powdering from the homegrown turmeric. So we'll move on from turmeric, and we'll now go to onion. Uh, There's a question about onion. One sec. So it's about harvesting. How many days to harvest onions? Yeah, that's something they've asked. And there's Chaitra is like, I have a small garden on the terrace and a small courtyard inside the house. I have empty plots on both the sides, and the biggest issue is that my garden has got red ants, not only on terrace but in the bedrooms, living rooms, etc. How do you control red ants that comes to the red soil? And they have made homes.
Okay.
So one is about onions, and the other one's about red ants.
Okay. So how many days to harvest onions? It takes about 4 months for you to harvest the onions. Again, what you'll see is that the shoots start getting really dry, and that's when it's a good time to harvest the onions. Okay. So I hope I answered that question. Chaitra's question on red ants. Okay. The best organic control for red ants is turmeric. So more turmeric requirement, right? So turmeric powder, good organic turmeric powder. If you can find the source of where the red ants are coming from, if you sprinkle turmeric powder generously, you'll see that red ants are will stop coming. But typically red ants come for some food. Also, do you have mealybugs or aphids on your plants, because ants will come to suck the sweet nectar that these pests give out. So just something for you to check in and see. Or is there any food that is just kept out or thrown out or something? So another thing for you to think about. That's just how to restrict red ants from coming in.
Okay. So one request was for Vandana to cut live ginger for potting, but I don't think she'll be able to do that now. Maybe she'll make a YouTube video
I have
someday.
to go get a knife.
No, that's
No,
fine.
I will show it to you very, very briefly. So I don't have a knife, so I'm just going to do it with my hand.
Sure. That's really helpful.
Okay, so I got a really small piece, and can you see that these lines?
Yeah.
Yeah. So typically, each of these lines will be a space where the shoots will come out. I would put a piece like this into the soil. So this is enough for the plant to start growing. Okay, but if you did put bigger pieces, it's not a problem. You can.
All right. And some people have really good comments about how amazing this session is. So thanks to you, Vandana. Do we need to replant the small plants in different pot grown from seeds, tomato, capsicum, etc., for better growth? And then the other one is, can you please share calendar of best months for growth of vegetables and greens? And then safe insecticides for kitchen garden. So I kind of clubbed three. One is the months that are suitable, and the other one is safe insecticides for kitchen garden, and the other one is do we need to have, I didn't get this question though, do we need to replant the small plants in different pots grown from seeds for better growth? So yeah.
Okay, so I guess what they mean is regarding the months for planting, that's a class by itself. So you can look up anything online looking for sowing seasons of vegetables in India, and a lot of people have created wonderful calendars, so that will be extremely helpful for you. So do look that up. Regarding replanting, so I guess what Manisha means is like, do you have to germinate it in a separate pot and then transplant it? So ideally, that's how they do it on large farms. That's how they would do it. They would germinate it in a small seed tray and then transplant that, because it is known to be more successful for the plant to grow. But if you dropped a few seeds right into the soil, it will still grow. So it really is up to you. But if you want to transplant it, maybe the success of it would be a lot higher. The next question was
Insecticides.
about insecticides, is it?
Yeah, I'll
What was
just
the question?
repeat that. uh, Basically Anjana asks, what are the safe and suitable insecticide for the
Safe,
kitchen garden to
suitable.
remove insects like ants?
Yeah. Okay. So I talked about turmeric. The other thing is called a 3G spray. Okay. 3G stands for green chili, ginger, and garlic. Okay. So you need, say, around 5 green chilies, one or two pods of garlic, and a small, such a small piece of garlic. I mean, ginger. grind it up, make it into a fine paste, and dilute it maybe up to say a liter, keep it overnight and spray it on your plants. This I've noticed is one of the most effective options for keeping away pests, especially mealybugs and aphids that everybody seems to suffer with. So this is one thing. The other thing is neem oil. So neem oil can be found at any garden store. You have to dilute it to 1 liter. So you take 10 ml and you dilute it into a liter and spray that as well. But with neem oil, you'll have to spray at least 4 to 5 days. So that is another organic insecticide that, it's not made at home, but it's very, very efficient. So I usually suggest that you follow a few steps. One is you try a water spray. If the water spray doesn't work, then you try neem oil. If the neem oil doesn't work, you do a 3G spray. If the 3G spray doesn't work, it really, it's tough to explain to people how to maintain their garden. So this is the only thing that helps. And even if the detergent spray doesn't work, you just cut that part which has a pest infestation and throw it far away from your garden.
Thanks, Vandan. I think the next question is for a lot of us. This we keep killing plants.
Okay.
How do we preserve plants inside the living room as it dies always? By Nazia.
Okay, like I said, plants cannot grow in darkness, so it needs diffused light. So the most vegetables don't grow in diffused lights, or flowering plants don't grow in diffused light. Flowering plants and vegetables need from 6 to 8 hours of full blown sunlight for them to grow and start fruiting. But lucky for you, we have a lot of shade loving plants that will do really well indoors, and many of them are air purifying plants. So we all know money plant, right? This is money plant which is being grown in water. You also have this is a spathophyllum, or peace lily as they call it. So that's also a pretty easy plant to grow. You see this syngonium plant. This is also easy to grow indoors. So they are all very well suited to grow in lesser amounts of sunlight. So they'll grow and they'll be green. So you won't get any flowers, you won't get any fruits, but at least you have foliage indoors. And of course, some of your succulent plants, but it still doesn't mean that they can grow in very, very less amounts of sunlight. Diffuse light is important.
Okay. Do microgreens also require nutrients from outside? Asks Rakhi Kumari.
Okay. Microgreens don't require any nutrients at all. So the way, a seed is set up, the way nature sets up a seed is that it gives it all the initial boost of nutrients that is required for it to grow to a certain height. So the plant throws out these seeds into nature, and when the seed falls on a spot that has some amount of moisture, all it needs is moisture. So it then starts setting its root and shoot until it reaches say around 3-4 inches. That's when we have to boost it with manure and other things. So microgreens falls under the same sort of context. You can grow microgreens and harvest it at around 2 to 3 inches. So at that till that point of time, a basic coco peat media is more than enough. Coco peat has nothing in it, or you can even just grow it in water. So you need a moist. So you need two pots. One, the bottom pot needs to have water. The top pot needs to have a lot of holes in it and a damp tissue. And you just sprinkle your seeds on that. The root take water from the pot underneath and they grow. But beyond 3 inches, they cannot grow anymore. So they'll all start dying. So that's a good time to harvest them.
Okay. So Sakshi wants to know how come it is very expensive to order online versus the local nurseries? Is there a reason?
Order what?
Order plants online
Order
is very
microgreens?
no, just plant is very expensive.
Because of transport costs.
Okay. So
Because of transport costs, I mean, we need to carefully transport plants, right? Which comes at a cost.
yeah. So we'll try and take as many unique questions as possible. It's so amazing that we have almost 70 questions now, and I'm just
Oh,
trying to
wow.
see what are the most, because, and someone has said it's okay if it goes beyond 12:30 because we want if we want to hear all the questions. So we'll try next 20 minutes or
Yeah, go ahead.
so. Yeah. What is the proportion of soil and coco peat? And the other question is any herbicide which can be made at home.
Okay, so like I said, soil and coco peat. We want soil, coco peat, and manure. We don't want only soil and coco peat. So you have 50% soil, 25% coco peat, 25% manure. So that's the proportion. Herbicides that you can make at home. I talked about the 3G spray. That's really something that's very. Oh, sorry, that's a pesticide. Herbicide. One of the one of the things that you can. I mean, a lot of people do a lot of things. Some people use buttermilk. Some people soak onion peel. So for flowering, you can soak all the onion peels that you throw away, soak it in water overnight, and do a foliar spray on the plants. You can also make a banana enzyme. So you soak banana pieces with a little jaggery in a jar and let it ferment for 21 days. Then that solution can be diluted and poured to your plants as well as sprayed on the plants. So that again is very useful for providing all the NPK for the plants, and it aids in flowering and fruiting and all of that. If you have some compost, you can also make a compost tea, which is take a little bit of vermicompost or your homemade compost and dilute it to 1 liter of water, make it into a solution, and do a foliar spray of that as well. So that also helps in providing nutrition to the plant. If you have some desi cows around you, then you can make Jivamrita.
Okay, that's good. So aloe vera, what do you think about that, Vandana? Is what Aliza wants to know. It's like generally, what's your thought on aloe vera?
Okay, aloe vera is a great plant. It is one of those plants that are naturalized and it's so easy to grow. It has multiple uses, from stomach ailments to skin. Right now, I'm sure if we asked you all to give us some recipes, there'll be 10 or 15 ladies giving us recipes of how to use aloe vera for the skin. So there are a lot of beneficial uses from aloe vera, so you should definitely grow that.
Okay, great. And so we have Vikas who says it's been over 60 days. I haven't seen any flowers growing on it. I mean, my tomato, there's nothing been happening on the tomato plant. So what is the problem, kind of a thing?
Okay,
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
You really have to look into the soil and see whether you've given it everything that it requires. Is it placed in a sunny spot? Is the water draining out easily? Is there a nutrition that you've provided in the soil? Is the pot a big enough size? So these are some things that I would urge you to look into and sort of investigate and see why your tomato plants are not growing, because by the first month or 40 days, it should start giving flowers.
Okay. So, yeah, just give me 1 minute. There are a lot more messages coming in. It has to just load.
Mm-hmm. Okay, somebody had a question about growing tamarind and ginger side by side.
Yeah.
Tamarind is a tree. Please put it out into nature so that it can grow into a full-grown tree. If you are growing any trees for that matter, if you're growing fruit trees, you need one of those huge garbage drums, which are almost 3 feet in height or 2 feet in height. That's the kind of soil requirement that we need for growing any fruit trees to be even able to fruit in that. So please don't try growing tamarind in the 1-inch pot. 1 foot pot,
For
2 feet pot. Okay.
you're reading some more questions. There's one which asks, for potting the garlic piece, do we need peel the entire white scaly layer of the cover or put it along with the white covering without peeling?
Just put it as it is.
Okay. Can you tell us something about, see, I don't know how to pronounce this. I'll try. Tinospora cardiofolia. Cardiofolia. And the medicinal uses.
Tinospora carifolia is what we call as amrutaballi here. It's a climber. I have it actually growing in my balcony, but it is definitely does very well in the soil. It's used for respiratory problems as well as general immunity. You can boil some of the Tinospora leaves in water and breathe in the steam if you're having any kind of chest congestion or nasal congestion. And the central part of the stem, that is the pith, is used for making different kinds of medicinal preparations for building general immunity.
Okay. This one's again about onions, about how do you actually really grow them? Do you grow them from seeds or do you, or from the onions itself? Asks Sakriti.
I guess she missed the part of the session where we talked about growing onions.
I think it's already spoken about earlier.
Yeah.
So we'll send a video and you'll get a recording. So whoever missed it can.
No, okay, I will. Okay,
So I think most of the questions are done.
okay. So I think there are some questions. I
Okay.
think then Jwalant had.
Yeah.
Jwalant, hello. Okay,
Am I audible?
Yes.
yeah,
Am I audible?
yeah. So
Okay.
you had some questions which were there, like your friends, the flowers
Right,
that
right.
grow and the rats are there and mosquitoes are there because of the
Yes,
plant.
I will ask. Thanks, Neelam Didi. Dr. Vanna, there is one particular question that I hear around and from a lot of friends. When they go into nursery, they find very nice ornamental plants. But when they buy it and bring it home within a week, sometimes a day, they dies out. That gives a big depression. Why it happens and what's your suggestion? What can we do?
So mostly, most nurseries would have pumped those plants with different chemicals. So there would be there are chemicals to flower as well. So it's sort of an unnatural thing that they, at such a young sapling stage, they are producing so many flowers. When you get it home, you are not going to use those chemicals, right? So therefore, then it's going to stop producing the flowers, and it's so used to having chemicals, and therefore it doesn't produce flowers. So my recommendation is that you buy it from a nursery that doesn't use chemicals at all, and or you source in native seeds that you can actually grow on your own. And there are a lot of people who are selling seeds which are open pollinated, that are organic, and you can start sort of germinating it at home itself, and they'll start blooming. And the thing about nature is that, I mean, seasons play such an important part. So there are plants that would flower only during a certain season, and that's what is, we need to encourage a lot more than trying to get plants to flower or fruit out of season, which is against their biology. So just a little understanding into this, but yeah, mostly it's because of the chemical sprays.
Thank you, Dr. Vanna. And Dr. Vanna, in monsoon season, which is the current season, any particular choice besides what you have already shown, a lot of vegetables? Are there any particular choice you would like to tell us we should put it in our terrace garden
Actually,
or
this
balcony?
I would not suggest that anybody does any planting in monsoons, because the rains can be a little harsh. And say you put in a newly transplanted tomato sapling, which is already so weak because it's something that's trying to establish itself, the rains would affect it. So generally, what we recommend is don't do any planting during the monsoon season, because just make all efforts to preserve your plants. New planting may or may not survive, and because there's so much of water, the soil also gets a little clayey. But apart from that, I mean, it's the time to plant onions and garlic. It is the second season for planting tomatoes. Greens you can grow through the year. There's no season for that. But again, when the greens are trying to establish itself, if there are heavy rains, it's all going to die. So yeah, these are some of the plants that you can start with.
One more common question we encounter, Dr. Vandana, is most of the time, doesn't matter which plant you bring in your balcony or terrace, they get the various kind of fungus or fungi. What to do with them?
Fungus usually comes because the roots are having trouble breathing. So it would invariably be something related to the drainage of water. Are you overwatering your plants? That's one thing to think about. If we are overwatering, then the roots are not able to take on that much of water that you're giving it, and therefore its immunity is dropping, and fungus will attack at that point of time. Rule of thumb is touch the soil. If it's moist, water. Don't water. If it is dry, water it. So that's just for
Right.
everybody to remember that you don't end up overwatering your plants.
My list is also long, Dr. Vanna, but I know we have spent, we overspent the
We could
time,
always connect.
right. But I would like to ask one last question from you, and I really need a answer for this because I'm also one of them who's asking this question. There's a tendency, I'm one single person in this whole city of Bangalore or the whole world. What contribution I can make when I should make a garden in my little terrace or little balcony? What contribution I can make? Can you guide us? Can you throw some light?
It's about your green
Okay.
footprint.
So your question is what?
It's like
Okay.
your green footprint is, it's like that.
So, like I was saying, you start small. You cannot become a garden expert overnight, but you start small and you start learning about, plants and sort of thinking how plants would think, because we already know what basics plant requires. So once you start seeing success in your garden, please, cover up your garden with plants and grow vegetables, grow flowers, attract butterflies, share your produce with your neighbors, and you will see that they they will be sort of so inspired by seeing that, oh wow, in your little balcony you're growing this stuff, maybe I can too, and inspire them to start with pudina, because that's the easiest one to start off with. So I would suggest that if you have a sunny balcony, use every little bit of space that you can to be able to grow stuff. Even if you are not growing stuff for your own kitchen, at least you're helping with biodiversity. You're helping the little worms in the soil also find a place for themselves, and you're making the air a lot more pure. Or you have a space of your own for therapy, and I'm sure your neighbor looking at your garden is also feeling very good about it. So
Right. So you're saying, Dr. Vanna, that I do contribute in the green footprint, as Neelam Didi also was saying, doesn't matter how small it is, it does contribute.
Yes.
yes.
Okay. No, what I think the question would be more pointed is like, suppose I have a 5 by 10 feet balcony, 50 square feet. How much carbon offsetting, carbon footprint that we are, sort of thing. Jwalant, I think that's the question, I suppose.
Yeah, that's that. So when I have very
In terms
small
of
place,
CO2
how much I'm contributing as a curious,
fixing
let's say, green
carbon
thumb.
or something like that.
Okay. If it would be a little, a small amount, it's not. If you have a little balcony, of course, the impact is not that huge. But if you can get people in your building to convert their balconies, of course, that's a lot more. If you're growing vegetables where you can stop going to the market, you're helping reduce that level of footprint, because vegetables also travel a lot to reach us.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
you're cutting down on that cost
yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
Even if you are not able to grow all your vegetables in your balcony space, you can at least grow stuff that will easily yield, and you can easily stop going to the market for, like greens, your herbs like pudina, coriander, your spices, that you need only small quantities of chilies, even tomatoes, that they yield really well. So these are the small efforts that you can start with, where slowly, and then once you start growing more, you'll figure out a wall, you'll figure out one other balcony, and therefore you could even reach a point where you're actually not buying anything from the market at all, because you have become self-sustainable.
So Jwalant, sir,
Thank you, Dr. Vanna. Yes, Chitra, you want to add something?
Yeah, sure. If everyone's done, I mean, the session's we're almost wrapping up this session. For those, we've tried our best to answer most questions, but there are certain limits, so we can go on and on about this for a long time. But yeah, we have to wrap up the question Q&A from the audience. So for people who want to know more, Vandana has a lovely YouTube channel, Urban Mali channel, and the website and Instagram and everything. The YouTube channel has so many different kind of ideas. So please go and subscribe to that. It's very informative. I think before I hand over to Neelam ma'am for conclusion, I would the one thing is just as if for in one line, Vandana, if you can tell us the importance of, say, a bee or a earthworm and how they play a good role in the ecosystem, because they are not threats, they are the ones who make it happen. So after that, I will then I request Neelam ma'am to kind of conclude and ask if there are any more questions, and then close by talking about CGBMT and our work that we do. So yeah, my question to you is the importance of the insects, and the bees.
Yeah, so the bees pollinate our flowers. Now we're all wanting flowers and we all want fruits, right? Without the flower, we're not going to have the fruit. And a maximum number of vegetables are pollinated by bees. So that little bee buzzing around is doing a really, really big job for being able to provide food for us. So food security is very, very dependent on saving the bees and creating spaces that the bees can thrive and have food for themselves. The earthworms, of course, they are also our mini tillers. So, they till the soil, they come up, get their organic matter, which is the compost that we give them. They eat that and they go back down. They leave their castings, which is amazing manure. So they're the natural tillers of our soil. You should all read up about natural farming, where they really provide such an important role to earthworms, because without them we don't have to try so hard to create a farm setting, because they are doing all of the work by themselves. Jivamrita is made of native cow dung, urine, basin, and jaggery. And this, when sprayed on your plants and given as some root application, will naturally attract earthworms if you're planting on the ground, because even wherever we are sitting, like 15 feet under us, there are earthworms that are already hibernating, and it just needs something as delicious as some manure for it to come up and start doing its duty. So yeah, that's the two very, very important agents for us to have a complete ecosystem around us.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And for anyone who wants more, in-depth advice and consulting, Vandana is always available through Urban Mali with her, excellent services. So it's all available. We'll be sending your links on email as well, with all the information, recording, and everything that you require to be in touch. Neelam ma'am, do you have anything to kind of say? And thank you so
Yeah,
much
I have
to
a
Alan sir for
yeah,
this
I have a
wonderful,
few things.
being a wonderful host. And yeah, Neelam ma'am, go ahead.
I have a few things. Yeah. One is that when we shift from balcony to a terrace, if you have, suppose you have an independent house and you have a terrace, how does anything change
No,
in doing it? Because we get more sunlight there.
of course, you want to put in only the sun-loving plants. So if you're having flowering plants, vegetable plants, they would have no impact when you move them to the terrace. In fact, they'll be a lot more happier. The shade plants, you have to continue keeping them in shaded spaces, because a sudden burst of sunlight, they probably are all going to get very badly affected and they won't even thrive.
Okay. Okay. So another question was, suppose I want to grow a larger plant in my balcony, like 10 feet or 12 feet. Do you think it's advisable? And what plants can we put there?
Maybe one. Yeah. So you see many of these minimalistic gardens, right? You have people just with one pot in one corner of the balcony. You need, if you want to grow a mini tree, like say plumeria, or you could even grow any of the fruit trees, you need a pot that is at least 2 feet or 3 feet in depth. We need that amount of soil, and the plant will grow up to, yeah, like you said, around 10 feet is the maximum that it would grow up to. But in the same balcony, maybe you don't want to load it with more pots, because then that, the soil will become very, very dry. puts pressure on the structure, and we don't want to do that.
Yeah, I mean that's actually because there's a trend now that in we also when we design buildings we are trying to give double height balconies where people can grow
Sure.
these kind of things. Yeah, and I think we have not covered some creepers if you think which we can put our balconies and places. Could you tell us
There
some of
are
the
many,
creepers that could
many
be actually be there?
amazing, yeah. If you have a good well-lit balcony, there are many native creepers that are so beautiful. Tangvaja mysorensis, that's the one that the sunbirds are having so much fun with right now. It's also called as Mysore clockvine. So the flowers have amazing sweet nectar for the sunbirds. The same genus, the Tangvaja grandiflora, is a lovely creeper which has large trumpet-shaped lavender color flowers. Then we have the garlic vine, we have the rangoon creeper. Passion fruit is a lovely creeper that you can grow, even get passion fruit out of. And all our gourds. I mean, if you want to convert your balcony in a productive space, we have all our different rich gourd, bottle gourd, snake gourd. They're all great gourds that if you give a good structure, they'll start growing and cover the space.
Okay. So actually, I think that's a really very informative thing. Just one thing to all the participants. I think we still have more than 120 people, even at the end of session, though we have the time is opened out. It's like this whole session that we have designed from CGBMT was like when we talk about government greening the city, or we talk about an NGO which taking up greening a city, it becomes a marathon task. But when each and every house, suppose in Bangalore we have maybe around 10 lakh houses, 15 lakh houses, even 50% of them, they make their balconies green and they grow their own then the greening of Bangalore will become so much more easier. And that's the message that we have through these simple living talks, is for a common man what he can do at his front to contribute to this greening of the. So this is also a concept of rewilding the urban, which we call as a concept, because yeah, landscape architects have this thing of and even clients also want very exotic species in their balconies and gardens which actually serve no purpose. And so when we talk about rewilding the urban, it is very simple logic that has to understand that all civilizations across the world actually started where they used to, they could grow food, or they had more of all these kind of things that were available to them. So cities actually has grown on biodiversity hotspots, not hotspots, I'll say biodiversity rich areas from the beginning. All civilizations started at the river, where there was a river or there was a water body. But we have, what we have done as architects and as developers, we have covered most of these areas, and so we do not have the wild corridors through the city. So these gardens actually can create at a micro level, yes, but when they together, together everyone, if they start doing it, it is going to be a big movement. And that is what we wanted to start. So thank you, Vandana, so much for such a wonderful, it was really, because I was also glued to the screen, and it's really amazing. Over to Chitra to wrap up,
Thank you so
though we
much,
don't
ma'am.
want to
Thank
wrap
you
up,
so much for this
but
opportunity.
yeah, yes.
Yes, so yes, it's been such a fantastic Sunday morning for all of us, coming together. And as CGBMT, the vision is for us, like ma'am said, is to work on simple steps towards really having a more sustainable life. And it's not going to be easy for sure, but I think the attempt is what is really matters. And these conversations will take us further in that. So the fact that 100 and almost 200 people participated on a Sunday morning is a great start. So thank you so much for all the audience participation, the questions, and I hope you'll continue learning about these aspects by visiting the websites, and which Vandana has put together, the YouTube channel and so on. And she's available on Instagram as well. So please follow her.
Yeah,
And we are available on all the social media channels. So
yeah, can I interrupt just for a moment, Chitra?
yeah.
I think we have forgotten. I think Sonam has also is from ASAGE, who is our hosting partner. We have forgotten her. She has been through on a Sunday morning. She has agreed even at the last minute. And hello, Sonam.
Thanks a lot, Architect Neelam.
Do
It
you
was
have
not
a
necessary,
question?
but thanks a
Do
lot.
you
Yeah.
have a question to Vandana? Do you have a question to Vandana?
So I was actually wondering from this. So I have a 3-year-old, okay, Vandana, and it's not about whether you would want the child to love and appreciate nature, but it is more like the child has so much of destructive tendency that whenever there is a flower or something like that, and he just uproots it. So which is why I've not been able to really have a garden around my house, because whenever we go and visit someone with the gardens, we know that it is his tendency. So I am not really in that phase where I'm forcing him to start, you know, not behaving in a certain way, or changing his attitude right now, because he's just 3. But I was just thinking that if you have also experienced something like this with others who kind of tend to be overtly involved with plants to the extent that they want to crush it, they want to smell it and which can lead to a destructive for the plant specifically. So is there a response that you could
Yeah.
recommend?
So plants offer sort of rewards for all our 5 senses. So apart from looking at a pretty flower, to smelling, a beautiful aromatic flower, to taste and touch, and all of that, you can actually find in the garden. So my only recommendation is to get your child, if the boy is it.
Yes, it's a boy. Good guess.
I'm just like naturally drawing conclusion that aggression is boy. Sorry. So you can get him
Like that, that's
to you can get him to start observing.
sexist on a platform.
Okay, you can start making him look at the flower. You can start making him touch a certain leaf. And if you don't want to start a garden because of this right now, then at least take him to spaces that are green, and have that continuous conversation. Our first instance is to say, don't touch it or don't pluck it, right? But it is to continuously have that conversation with, touch this, see how it feels, see what I'm doing with it. Oh, the smell is so lovely. Pop it in your mouth and you eat it. So then he can pop it in
Yes,
his mouth and
after
he
doing
eats it.
all of
So
that, his
it is a
response is
conversation.
that let me just uproot the tree, let me just uproot the plant. So
I mean, kids are they do have that
hmm.
tendency to just throw stuff in. It is a phase. So I'm guessing that he's going to get out of it, and then when he starts understanding or comprehending things a little better, then maybe then slowly you can start introducing him to what is a garden.
Nice, thanks a lot.
And thank you so much, Sonam, for this whole platform, and hosting us, and bringing everyone together. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
And yeah, and the last minute help that you have given. And
Jalan.
also Anjualan, the host, our amazing host, who has read up and who has spent time on about gardening, and he himself has been gardening for so long, but he has prepared for this successful workshop. Thank you so much, Jwalan sir, for being part of
Thank you,
this.
Chitra. Thank you, Anilam Didi, for giving the
And yeah,
opportunity. I
and
also
Vandana
learn a
will be
lot.
continue this further.
Good.
Vandana will continue this further to a practical
ma'am.
session, which all the audience is asking. Once we have
Yes, ma'am. But for sure, ma'am.
driven
I'm
COVID
always
away,
ready.
when we have driven COVID away, we will have a proper session. Because
Definitely.
we want to work together on that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, for a great session, and you have a good weekend. Bye.
Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you.
Thanks a lot, Neelam ma'am, Jwalakan sir, and Chitra. I had a lot of fun giving this session, and thanks for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you.
No, it was a pleasure.
It was amazing having you. Bye. Bye.